Welcome to .org Communities Thursday webinar. And this morning we have Ashish with BenchPrep, who's going to talk to us about mastering revenue growth. So without further ado, I'm going to first have a couple announcements before we get going. So housekeeping. Everyone's on mute, but please use the chat and the Q&A feature. We'll get to all your questions at the end. And then everyone registered for this webinar will receive a link to the recording, as well as your information for your CAE, as this is now approved by the ASAE CAE. So we're happy to have that. And for those of you who've been following us, or maybe you don't know, but our 8th annual Solutions Day is November 2nd, in just a few weeks. So it'll be great in-person networking. We have a full lineup of case studies and education and knowledge sharing. And if you want to continue the conversation with BenchPrep, Jake and Evan from BenchPrep will also be there on November 2nd. So if you would, here's the QR code to get that registration link going. All right, great. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ashish from BenchPrep, who's going to talk to us about growing revenue.
Thanks, Kevin. Welcome, everyone. Welcome all. Let me share my screen quickly and then we'll jump into stuff. Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome, everyone. I am really excited to share this framework with you. Thanks, Kevin, for having me. We have 30 minutes, so we gotta jump in. So let's get started. First and foremost, my name is Ashish Rangnekar. I am the CEO and co-founder of BenchPrep. Most importantly, I'm a lifelong learner. And currently, I am learning how to keep some of my indoor plants alive. And it's not easy, as it looks, but apparently too much water and too much sun can be bad too. But hey, I'm glad I'm not a professional gardener. As you can see, it took me a degree in mechanical engineering and applied mathematics and an MBA to figure out that my real passion is to help elevate everyone's potential through learning. And with that vision in mind, more than a decade ago, I founded BenchPrep. Now, at BenchPrep, our mission is to enable association and credentialing bodies to drive revenue growth and learner success. And I truly feel lucky and humbled that we get to enable some of the leading associations and credentialing bodies across verticals: technology, healthcare, finance, you name it. ISACA, CFA Institute, PMI, Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, Supply Chain Management, and so on and so forth. And just last year, we added more than 1 million new learners on our platform. We have active learners in more than 50 countries, more than 400 million assessment items were answered. And I share all this because this scale has given us a lot of data to come up with insights and frameworks, one of which I'm going to share with you today. Now, this is the agenda. Again, we have a lot to cover. But first, I'm going to briefly share why this topic is important. I call this a 10x opportunity. And then we'll jump into understanding the lifelong learning roadmap that we have put together. And then I'll give you a simple 5-step process to deploy this framework. The process is simple. The actual kind of the execution of it is where the magic happens. And of course, I'll walk you through an illustrative example so that we can actually make it, bring it home and make it real. And we'll try to do our best to keep at least 5 minutes for questions at the end. And if we don't get to questions, I'll be sure to follow up with you after the webinar, and we can talk more. This is one of my favorite topics, so I can go on and on and on. Now, before moving forward, I want to align on some definitions around terms that I'll be using throughout the webinar. Now, all of these definitions and everything that we are talking about today, essentially, is within the context of professional learning. And there are two things on this list of definitions that I want to call out. First is this difference between certifications and certificates and micro-credentials. Typically, certifications are high stakes. They are broader in their scope. They involve, among other things, passing a high stakes exam. They're more well established in terms of industry recognition. On the other hand, there are certificates and micro-credentials that are more narrow in scope, medium stakes, and relatively new in terms of industry recognition. Now, there are a lot of nuances that we don't need to kind of get into, and the difference between these is not the topic here. The framework that we're going to present applies across all these credentials, use cases, and products. The other thing that I would highlight is I'm going to use candidate, learner, and member interchangeably. Essentially, we are talking about the professional who we serve. If the professional is working towards a certification, then the term candidate is more appropriate. But if they are engaging in a webinar or come to a conference, then maybe it seems more like a member-like engagement. So you'll get the context. So these are kind of just some definitions to start with. Okay, so the first question is, why is this topic important? And not just important, the topic I feel is urgent. Because the professional learning market, as we see in front of our eyes, is going through an exciting transformation, actually. And this has created a once-in-a-lifetime 10x opportunity for associations. First, we are seeing the demand for certification is increasing. WorkCred did the survey a couple of years ago that showed more than half of the organizations are seeing increased demand for their certification. And 2/3 of them are planning to offer new certifications. On the other hand, we see the CE, the continuing education market, is expected to grow by 50% over the next 5 years. And then there are certificates and micro-credentials. Newer in the ecosystem, but they're also expecting to see double-digit growth. Now you see all this, and the question becomes, who is best placed to capture this growth? Is it the higher education sector? I don't think so. They have a lot of issues going on, and they need to kind of sort that out before they actually make a compelling play in this world of alternate credentials, specifically certifications and professional learning. Maybe it's a corporate world. Well, some companies like, I would say, Google, Microsoft, AWS have done a decent job, but this is not their core business. They look at credentials as a way to support their specific technology, not a broader profession. This has created a very amazing opportunity for associations. You all are very well placed to capture this opportunity. And what we are seeing associations are beginning to do is widen the aperture through which they look at the market. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, through all of our customers, we have driven more than 100 million in revenue, serving millions of professionals every year. And based on this, we have created this compelling framework for associations to evaluate growth opportunities so that they can drive disproportionate growth. And the framework that I'm going to present first helps identify and then effectively leverage some of these opportunities so that you go from the initial identification of what can drive growth to a successful implementation. Okay, so let's go. Now, first things. I read this study, I think it was sometime last year. Associations Trends did this survey in 22 and found that nearly 50% of the associations reported member growth in 2022, a tad bit less, actually 49%. And that stat was very alarming. When we just looked at the growth in CE, the growth in certifications, the growth in micro credentials, with that kind of macro environment, I would have expected a much more overwhelming majority of associations demonstrating growth. So what is going on? And how do we ensure that you are in the 49% that are actually growing, not the 51%? Now, when associations think of growth, typically they think of revenue growth and impact growth. And that goes hand in hand. Revenue funds impact, impact drives the mission. So when we look at growth, it's a combination of revenue and impact. Then there are learning program goals that support this business growth objective. And again, I'm not covering things like build a better website, right? We are specifically talking about learning initiatives. And within that context, we see typically 5 goals. Increase number of candidates or members, improve pass rates, increase products that are used by per learner or a member, improve learner engagement, and improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the way it goes is the business objective is growing revenue or impact. The learning objective is we're going to do that by improving pass rates, or we're going to do that by improving learner engagement. We're going to do that by improving diversity, equity, and inclusion in our candidate pool or member base. So that's where it kind of begins from a organizational top-down perspective. Then these organization goals map to specific growth strategies. This is where the magic begins to happen. Now, broadly speaking, there are 4 growth strategies, and I'll elaborate on each one of these in a minute. You can grow by extending new use cases, extending into new use cases or new category of products. You can grow by launching new products altogether. You can grow by offering new instructional methods, or you can grow by opening up or leveraging new distribution models. Now, this is what we call the lifelong learning roadmap. All those growth strategies map to specific initiatives and activities. These use cases, products, instructional methods, and distribution models create a roadmap for your lifelong learning product portfolio. So let's spend a few minutes unpacking this. New use cases. Think of use cases as a category of products. What problem are you trying to solve? Certification training is a use case or a category of products. Skills training is a use case. Continuing education is a use case. Then there are products within each of these use cases. A product can be a body of knowledge or a curriculum, a micro course. It can very well be a prep course or a study group. Then the consideration becomes, what instructional method are you using to deliver these products? Is it self-paced? Is it instructor supported or instructor led? And then finally, how are you distributing? Typically, most associations focused on direct to consumer, which is direct to the professional. More and more in the last, I would say 3 years or so, we are seeing a shift towards B2B. And by B2B, I mean corporate channel, or higher ed. Lately, we have also seen associations partnering with training companies. Another interesting way to deliver these products is through third-party marketplaces like Coursera or Degreed. And there are several permutation combinations of it. But if you look at kind of the product portfolio today and the roadmap, the answer lies somewhere on this slide. And here is an example, right? So you might have a certification training use case. You have a certification. Your goal is to actually provide training for that certification. That leads to 3 different types of products. You can offer a prep course, you can offer a question bank, or you can offer a virtual study group. You may choose to deliver the prep course and a question bank in a self-paced mode. The professional or the candidate or the member comes in, registers, uses the course, and that's it. For a study group, you might want to have an instructor lead it. And then you can take this product either direct to professional or maybe through a higher ed channel. This might actually plug in very well as part of the degree program or as part of the continuing professional education programs in colleges and universities all around. So this is just an illustrative example of, one specific case of how this might actually unravel. So now that we understand the lifelong learning roadmap, all those options and that we saw, let's go back to the learning goals. Now, organizational learning goals map to specific growth strategies. I talked about it like 3 minutes ago. This is how it plays out. If your goal is to increase the number of candidates, maybe the best approach would be to extend into new use cases or launch new products or open new distribution models. All this would open up the funnel and get more professionals in your system. To give an example, maybe launching a certificate program or a micro-credential, which is much lower stake, will help get the professionals who are not really sure about the big certification program in the door. So this is an example of how one specific organizational learning goal maps to kind of 3 growth strategies. Similarly, if the goal is to improve pass rates for your certification, launching into a new use case won't help. Launching a new micro-credential doesn't help with the pass rates. But launching a new product like a question bank or a mock exam that is targeted towards better outcomes can make a big difference. Similarly, if the goal is to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion, you might have to launch a new product that will make it easier and potentially cheaper for professionals from these underserved communities to engage with you. A mobile version of the product or a virtual study group might be the solution here. Similarly, if the goal is to improve learner engagement, there is kind of few strategies to deploy, and so on and so forth. So each one of these map to specific. The question becomes, the options in front of you. We saw the learning goals, we saw the associated growth strategies, and there are a bunch of these specific options, right? So even within use cases, there are 5 use cases. Within products, there can be 7, 8 products. The question becomes then, how do you prioritize those? How do you figure out which one to take on first? And that's where this 5-step process comes in. So the first step in this would be to establish fact-based. Let's document and align on where you are now and what's the goal. This is where you identify the business objective. Are you trying to grow revenue, or are you trying to save cost, or are you trying to grow impact? And then what exactly is the learning program goal? And what's the current state of your products as it maps to the lifelong learning roadmap? Step 2 is inventory of solutions. Let's write down all possible ways to grow. And I'm going to walk you through an illustrative example to make this all real. And the whole notion of step 2 is there are too many options. So let's kind of start with a good set of options that we discussed on slide 9 And you'll still feel that there are going to be too many. And then in step 3, we narrow them down. Well, how? Based on 3 criteria. Time to realization, how much time does it actually take to get this product to market? What's the level of effort or investment that is needed? And what's the impact on growth? And then you need to kind of figure out, do you want quick wins or do you want kind of big strategic bets? And maybe some combination is the answer. And then you go deep to evaluate these 3 ideas. You can't evaluate 16 ideas. You kind of get it down to like 2 to 3 ideas. And this is where, in step 5, this is where the rubber meets the road. Execute to success. This is where you can leverage the industry ecosystem, identify a vendor who can be your strategic partner, get all the go-to-market teams aligned. So this is the 5-step process, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how a successful implementation of this looks like. Sounds straightforward, right? It is, and I can tell you that at BenchPrep, we recently went through one iteration of this exact same exercise, and the process was enlightening. This approach is defining our 3 to 5 year roadmap as well. And this is what we actually take it to our customers and help them grow. So let's go through this illustrative example, and all of this kind of would become real. So the example that I took is CompTIA. Let's see how CompTIA, Computing Technology Industry Association, unlock growth. Now, some of you might know CompTIA is world's leading IT certification and training body. It's a mission-driven organization committed to unlocking the potential of every student, every professional seeking a career in technology. And they provide and help through their global network of partners, millions of people every year. About 6 years ago, when we started working with them, their challenge was, how do we drive revenue? And their learning goals were improving learning engagement and increasing number of learners or candidates. So it's a mission-driven organization. The eventual goal is impact. How do we actually kind of get to impact is by increasing revenue. How do we increase revenue? By improving learner engagement and increase the number of learners and candidates. That's how they kind of laid it out. Now, when we kind of document this is kind of our step 1 and 2. The business objective is revenue growth and impact growth. Revenue funds impact drives the mission. So the learning goals come out to be increasing number of candidates and improve learner engagement. Then we mapped it to the growth strategies, and they actually mapped to all 4 growth strategies in a slightly different way. And now there was a need to go deeper and look at specific opportunities. So the broad growth strategies kind of make sense, but exactly what do we do? So this is where we mapped it to the lifelong learning roadmap. For CompTIA, the ones that are highlighted were the solutions that were considered. So they considered introducing a new use case in certification training and skills training. They considered launching a prep course practice product. They considered not only offering it as self-paced, but in instructor-led models, and so on and so forth. You look at this, and it's actually very clear that this is a lot. Right? You just cannot do all of this well. And that's where this 5-step prioritization process came in. So again, this is an illustrative example when we map to what these kind of steps look like. We have already kind of seen step 1 and 2. In step 3, it's about prioritization. Step 4, they actually laid out what those specific goals look like for them. What are the realistic outcomes? They were focused on increasing revenue and increasing the number of candidates. And the approach that they took in terms of execution is one of partnership. They partnered with the likes of BenchPrep, Logical Operations, Coursera, and I'm sure several other companies to make sure that the end product that they're delivering is nothing but best in class. Now let's look at kind of how that maps in a more visual way. So we talked about revenue growth, those two learning outcomes, all of those possibilities, filtering them through evaluation criteria of time to realization, the level of effort, and the impact on growth. Now, what this translates to is a roadmap, and this is what the end product was. So the phase one was launching a new CE micro course. The outcome that they were able to draw with it is 20% increase in revenue in the first year, high user ratings, high renewals right out of the gate. Then their step two was, or phase two was, launching a prep course and then leveraging B2B and higher ed channels. The combined effect of those two steps was a 5x increase in revenue in 5 years. And just recently, last week, they announced that they launched some skills training courses on a third-party marketplace. And we'll see what that outcome looks like. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Now, it took CompTIA roughly 3 to 5 years to unravel this growth plan and strategy. But the results have been outstanding. They're looking at a 5x growth in their learning revenue over the last 5 years. That is game changing. So that's the power of this framework. That's the power of unlocking revenue growth using a systematic approach like this. And that's where the magic is. Now, CompTIA did it very well. CFA Institute has done this well. Association of Supply Chain Management has done this well. Project Management Institute has done this well. So can you. Where do you begin? And I don't have a big reveal here. Where we begin is step one. The thing though is, you would be very surprised by the level of momentum you can create by just committing to step one. Step one will show you the gaps and opportunities available to help you drive growth. And just step one alone will be eye-opening and will be enough to create momentum. So I'm sure you know the business objectives and the learning program goals. Let's map those current product state to lifelong learning roadmap, and let's kind of begin to see what product opportunities are available. That's what we all do next week. Cool. As they say, I'm looking at time, as they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. Similarly, the best time to start on the growth journey is now. Thank you.
Thanks, Aziz. As you guys have questions, please use the chat. But I do have one for you. What about our current programs? Because even at .org Community, we offer CE courses, and I know a lot of our audience here today have the same thing. So how do you use this framework on the existing product that we already have? Excellent point, Kevin.
I'm sure all of you have a variety of learning products. So first or foremost, you should look at improving these products and making sure that they are serving your learning goals. If improving an existing CE course helps you improve learner engagement and drive revenue, you are in an excellent spot. Do that. In most cases, you will find that you'll have to launch new products or new use cases or new distribution methods to turbocharge growth. Okay? We are not talking about optimization. This framework is more about growth than optimizing the new framework. So I see this more as like, hey, this is our optimization plan. How do we continue to improve our current set of products? And how do we actually open up a whole new set of revenue opportunities and growth opportunities by deploying this framework?
Okay, and I know some of us are probably thinking here that, hey, I can't just add additional resources or even find the time to maybe execute or even think about some of the strategies you suggest. So what do you recommend for those of us who can't just expand our resources on a whim and really maximize our current time to leverage some of the strategies you offer here?
Yeah. See, I think my experience says that typically I have seen smaller teams being more successful in identifying the right growth strategy than bigger teams. When bigger teams like slows down the process, and there are like multiple levels of committees and approvals and so on. So purely in terms of figuring out what is the growth strategy, I would almost say the smaller teams are more nimble and more effective. And then when it comes to execution, you've got to leverage the ecosystem of partners and vendors. We live in a very connected world. No one can kind of do this alone. In most cases, whatever you're trying to do in terms of launching a product or creating content or opening up a new distribution channel, this has been done before. There are LMS players who can help you deliver a prep course within weeks. There are content vendors who can help you repurpose your existing content and create new products within weeks. So I would say lean into your small team. That's kind of the right approach. And then leverage the ecosystem of partners and vendors to make sure that you're executing to success.
Great. And as some of us consider this journey and embark on it, do you have any like what do we look out for or avoid or what not to do? What are those gotchas out there that might be ahead of us?
I think the biggest, I would say, category of gotchas is I have seen a lot of associations play too much defense. And it manifests itself into kind of two different ways. So a lot of associations would believe that it's not their mandate to, just as an illustrative example, it's not their mandate to distribute in higher ed, or it's not their mandate to launch a prep course. That's changing. I mean, if your customers, that is the professionals, need a solution, it's your responsibility to help them. We also see a lot of associations just like get into the optimization game. Like, oh, we actually have a lot of products. How do we actually kind of make them marginally better? The world is changing fast. Customers' needs are changing, and no company can grow by just optimization. So I think, given again, going back to the big macro tailwinds that we are seeing, this is the time for all of us to play offense, not defense.
Well, this has been great. Thank you very much for sharing with us your strategies. And if you have other questions for Ashish or BenchPrep, you can go to benchprep.com. And remember, we have Jake and Evan from BenchPrep coming out November 2nd to Solutions Day. So you can also continue the conversation there. So with everyone, thank you for joining us today on our webinar. And Ashish, thank you so much for leading us through this discussion this morning or the afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. So that'll conclude our webinar for today. And stay tuned for our upcoming events, especially Solutions Day on November 2nd. For now, we'll be signing off, and thank you very much.